Here's a guy who gets a bunch of science wrong and thinks it proves God.
Teach Torah and science. So luckily, I'm lucky that I have the two that come together. And one of the questions that I'm asked as a scientist is, how can a scientist really believe that there's something what we refer to usually as God? Is this metaphysical whatever acting in the world or producing the world? And the irony is, the question's really a non-starter. Science has in fact discovered God. And you can talk to the hardline atheists and they will say, it looks like science has indeed discovered God.
Citation needed. Who are these hardline atheists who will admit that science has proven God?
And how would that be? Well, if you take the trouble of going to the web and there type in WMAP, the initials for a satellite, it's a diagram that shows the development of the universe from the creation over time. It's a timeline. Every word on that diagram comes from the NASA site. It is the condensed knowledge of the scientific community of how the universe created and how it got to where we are today. Each of the lines, the vertical lines, is another billion years. Okay, you start from a burst of energy at the extreme left side of the diagram, and you end up at the far end with the oval. The oval is to indicate expansion in all directions. Of course, because it's a timeline, we can't show that on a single piece of paper. We see here, most amazingly, that on the extreme left edge, it shows a beginning to the universe. Now go back less than 50 years. If I were teaching that at Tech, a person could lose tenure saying that there was a creation of the universe. It sounds like it's Bible.
That's not true. When the idea that the expansion of the universe implied a singularity sometime in the past was first proposed, it was unpopular, but you wouldn't lose tenure for proposing it. It was first proposed by a Belgian physicist named Georges Lemaitre, who, despite being a priest in addition to being a physicist, was annoyed when the Pope argued that this hypothesis corroborated the idea that the Bible was right. He thought that was something of a hasty conclusion.
Because less than 50 years ago, the overwhelming scientific opinion was the universe is eternal. There was never a beginning. The Bible is wrong from the very first sentence. And then we discovered, suddenly, Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson, the Bell Labs in New Jersey, the northeast of the US, discovered the echo of the Big Bang, the energy left over, which George Gamow, 60 years ago, predicted that if there had been a universe created hot and small, it would have exploded, and the energy would get more and more dilute. And Penzias and Wilson, these Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson, discover this energy that had been predicted overnight. The Bible got it right. There was a beginning.
The discovery of the microwave background radiation showed that things were a lot denser in the past, and thus that time probably does not stretch backward infinitely. However, Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Which isn't true. The earth wasn't created until about 9.5 billion years after the heavens first existed. Also, being finite in the past is not the same thing as being created.
Now, the black in the diagram is nothing. It's not a vacuum. Vacuums are within that diagram, within that cone of expansion. Vacuums are empty space, and space is something. The black of the paper around the diagram is nothing. It doesn't fit in our human brain because humans think in a box made of time, space, and matter/energy. No human, as clever as they might be, as expansive as they might be, thinks out of that box.
Which is why the idea of a timeless, spaceless, disembodied mind can't make any sense to a human mind, and thus no human can truly believe in it. Thank you for proving igtheism to be correct.
So when we say outside that diagram is nothing, we can use the words, but we can't conceive of nothing. It doesn't fit in the human brain. How are we going to have this idea, is there a God or not? Notice that the creation force isn't a three-letter word, G-O-D. If you look at the words carefully, it's a quantum fluctuations. That understanding was first brought down by Ed Tryon, brilliant human being, in the journal Nature, almost 40 years ago. The universe allows creation of something from nothing, provided you have the laws of nature, the quantum fluctuation.
If you have the laws of nature, then you don't have nothing. Also, quantum fluctuations are neither nothing, nor are they the laws of nature. The laws of nature are simply descriptions of the regularities with which matter, energy, space, and time behave. Without matter, energy, space, and time, there are no laws of nature. And even if you could have both nothing and the laws of nature, you could not, in fact, create matter and and energy, because among the laws of nature are the laws of conservation of mass and energy, which would prevent you from creating these things from nothing.
Tryron realized, and he published in the journal Nature, one of the two leading peer-reviewed journals in the world, that you can create something from absolute nothing, provided you've got the laws of nature, quantum physics and the laws of relativity. In other words, the laws of nature.
How do you have the laws of nature if you have nothing?
So look what science has discovered. We can create the universe from absolute nothing, provided we have the forces of nature. Now, the laws of nature, the forces of nature aren't physical, they act on the physical.
No, they don't. They are descriptions of what physical things do. As Bertrand Russell has said, the laws of nature are not behests. They are not like legislative laws that tell anything what to do. Laws are what physical things do all on their own. They don't act on physical things. In fact, if it were the case that laws of nature were not physical, it's not clear what it would even mean for them to act in any sense. What does it mean for something that isn't physical to do anything, let alone act on anything?
So if they create the universe, that means they predate the universe.
What does it mean to predate the universe? Predate implies that there was a time prior to the universe's existence. If time began when the universe did, it's a contradiction in terms to say anything predates the universe. Since the universe is essentially a space-time continuum, any time which existed prior to this universe would be the time of another universe. Anything existing in another universe would still be physical, not supernatural.
So now we have a set of forces, we call them the laws of nature, that are not physical.
Again, if they occupy time, which they would have to in order to predate anything, then they are physical. Also, I doubt many physicists would call the laws of nature forces. Physics recognizes four forces, and the force that the laws of nature supposedly exert upon the universe is not among them.
That are able to act on the physical, they create the physical from absolute nothing.
Which would actually be a violation of the laws of nature, not an action of the laws of nature.
And they predate the universe, which means they predate our understanding of time.
That's a contradiction in terms. Predate is a temporal orientation. It is contradictory to say that anything predates our conception of time.
Put that together, it sounds very familiar. If you haven't noticed it, that's the biblical definition of God.
Where exactly does the Bible define God this way? This seems like a more modern apologist's definition of God, and it seems to be entirely incoherent.
There's only one nuance that's left hanging. We can talk about it another time, perhaps. It's that which created the universe, those forces active in the universe. But up to that point, science says you are correct. The definition of the biblical God is predates time, outside of time. God is not a physical being, is a force, and it creates the universe.
How can a force be non-physical? How can something non-physical act on the physical? What does it even mean for something non-physical to exist? How does something exist without occupying time? If it's outside of time, how is that different from saying that it doesn't exist at any time or for any time? And if it doesn't exist at any time or for any time, what does it mean to say it exists at all?
You'll notice that the opening chapter of Genesis, the only name for God is Elohim, God as manifest in the universe. Science has indeed discovered the biblical God. Well, we just need one part left, crucial. That which created the universe is also active in the universe itself. The very fact that you're watching this now pretty much establishes that point.
How does it do that? This sounds like you're saying that I'm God. How else would my actions prove the occurrence of God's actions? To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.